Yo vine a este país para darles a ti y a tu hermana una oportunidad. Aprovecha esa oportunidad y nunca seas complacente. So, this is going to be kind of like a Quentin Tarantino film. Things are not going to be in chronological order, but at the end, everything's going to tie in. So I get the phone call. Gilberto, we just finished touring a facility in Southern California, and they're building rockets, and they're launching them into space. And it's very interesting what they're doing there, and one of the things that they're going to look at doing is building an actual launch site, launch rockets over the ocean, and they're looking at 4 different states, and Texas actually happens to be one of them. And Brownsville has been mentioned. Brownsville's my community. So they proceed to kind of fill me in a little bit more on it, and then he says the name of the company is SpaceX, that's short for Space Exploration Technologies, and see what you can do with it. So I kind of pause, thinking about it, scratch my head. Then I turn to my wife, and I tell her, you know, I just got a call from the governor's office, and they said that they've got this company, so on and so forth, and seems very interesting. I mean, we might actually have a shot at it. To which she turns around, very stern, and says, that's fantastic, that's fine and dandy, but right now, there's 50 kids inside that place waiting for your son's birthday party. I was in the parking lot of Chuck E. Cheese, and my 3 boys were in the truck, and they were just going nuts, right? So that's why I remember the date. It was March 5th, 2011, one of my boys' birthday parties. So the next day, I'm already on the phone. I'm on a conference call with their internal site selection team. And the lady that was heading it up, she was actually a Texas native. So she starts talking a little bit about the actual project, what it all entails, and mentions that, hey, look, you know, Boca Chica Beach is of interest to what we're trying to do. Of course, this was one in a gazillion sites that they were looking at. The other ones were Florida, Puerto Rico, and Georgia. And the reason this was interesting is because, as you can see, Brownsville, Texas is what I like to say at the bottom of the earth. We're in the southernmost tip of the state of Texas, but not only that, we're also a little further south than Miami, Florida. So any further south for us, and you're either in Mexico or in the ocean. So from there, you can actually, at the beach, which is in the outskirts of Brownsville, an undeveloped beach, you can launch from there across the Gulf of Mexico, shoot that gap between the southern tip of Florida, basically the Florida Keys and Cuba, and then over the Atlantic Ocean. And she proceeds to say, it's got a very intriguing geographic position. Okay, so 2 weeks later, I'm already boarding the plane there in Brownsville, and I've got my notes on the actual project. I'm reading up on the company, our due diligence, learning a little bit about this person that's behind this particular company. Keep in mind this is 2011. And so we arrive at their headquarters in Hawthorne, California at SpaceX. It's a huge hangar-like facility. And coincidentally, it was also, or ironically, it was a former Howard Hughes aircraft manufacturing facility where they're now operating from. And I still remember walking in, from the corner of my eye, I saw at the very far end there was another building, and it said Tesla Motors. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I guess they also build cars, right? So we walk in, we're greeted, and then we're at the table. We're at the table. It's me and a small delegation from my community, and then Elon Musk walks in, and he actually sits right next to me. So we start talking about the project. He walks us through the whole process. He starts talking a little bit about rocket science, the physics behind launching an actual rocket into space, what it all entails. And then he starts touching on equatorial launches. So the reason our part of the world was very interesting is because an equatorial launch is basically, and this is in his words, the further south you are, or the closer you are to the equator, which would be us, the less fuel and a heavier payload you can take into space because you're using the Earth's gravitational or Earth's rotational speed. It's kind of like a slingshot. You get that rocket into space a little faster. So that was intriguing about our actual position. So what do we do as economic developers? When we're meeting with prospects, whether it's the smallest homegrown business to being in Manhattan, New York, meeting with Fortune 500 companies, C-level executives, we're already analyzing the project. So how much time is this going to take? Priority, because we're all busy, right? We've got this project now, and where does it rank with all the other projects that we have? Time, how much time is it going to take? then you start talking yourself into resources. Well, aside from incentives, what else are we going to be putting into it? Are we going to be pulling staff into this particular project and what have you? So the economic developer in me, no different than you all, is already processing this information. And at the same time, because this is rocket science and we've never really been exposed to this, Brownsville, Texas, very traditional manufacturing logistics community on the border, also by the sea. How am I going to convince my leadership back in my community, go back and tell them, hey, we should invest in this company that has had 2 failed launches, but they've just successfully launched 1 rocket. Bet on them to build a rocket factory in our backyard. Mind you that we know nothing about rocket science. How am I going to package that back to our community leadership? So as we're there in the boardroom, he kind of pauses, and now he's got our attention. And then he asks, do you know why I'm doing this? I'm going to circle back to this here in a little while. So now I'm going to take you to another part of my life. Now it's the 1990s. I'm at the University of Texas at Austin. And welcome horns. And so it's 5:30 in the morning, and I'm in the dorm, and while everybody's still asleep or still crawling in from the night before, I already have an assembly line of food ingredients spread out through the kitchen. So I've got tortillas over here, I've got ham and egg in one frying pan, chorizo and egg in the other pan, vegetables over here, spices, salt, pepper, and then the foil paper, and then a little cooler. So I'm going 100 miles an hour. It takes me about 30 to 40 minutes of prep time to get everything ready. And then the actual cooking part is just like 15 minutes. It's not that long. And then another 20 to 25 minutes to package everything and then put it inside the cooler. So then I board the UT shuttle bus, backpack on one arm and then a little cooler on the other. I did this for several years. Actually, I did this for 5 years. I was on the 5-year plan. And so I get to the campus. So I stop at the engineering building and I drop off a batch of tacos there, which, by the way, I think in Canada you all call them burritos. So these are, in Texas, we call them tacos. So I drop them off at the engineering building, and I make my way to the communications building, drop off another batch. And then I get to the liberal arts building, which their special request was veggie tacos. That's why I had the vegetables there. Then I'm at the telephone services department, which is where I had a work study, a job there. So it's already 9 o'clock. I'm at my desk. I drop off a batch, and I'm already working away. In the afternoon, I was then attending classes, and then I had a night job as well. So what does this have to do with economic development? Well, I'm here to tell you that it's got everything to do with economic development, from the marketing to the recruitment to the incentives. Had to give out some samples in order to build a customer base, closing the deal. But I'm here to tell you that the one skill set that I learned that I'm still using today is building relationships. And at the root of it all, economic development is all about relationship building. And that's the one thing that selling tacos taught me, is that recurring business that I got from all those relationships. But look, economic development is about the money. Whether it's in the form of jobs coming into your community, we're all asked, how many jobs are you bringing in every year? Capital investment, how are you expanding the tax base for your city? Are you contributing to your tax coffers? So basically, bottom line, it's about the money. And when I was in college, it was exactly about that. I was selling tacos to make money. And I was selling 100 tacos a day at about $1 to $1.50 each. And my overhead was no more than $10. So as you can imagine, in the 1990s, that money was just pouring in. I mean, it was coming. I got to a point where if I wanted to, I could expand the business, hire some people, but I actually needed to study, right? So I've just explained the what. The what were the tacos. The how was selling them to make money. But the why was in the 1990s, the average student was incurring between $40,000 to $50,000 in student debt. It's significantly more now. My why was that tacos put me through college. Now I'm going to go back to the 1970s. I'm 4 years old, and I'm not going to harp on this one too much because it is a sensitive topic, and in economic development, we tend to stay away from certain topics. So My parents are from a little ejido. Ejido is a village in northeast Mexico, just on the other side of the Texas-Mexico border. And that part of Mexico is actually has a huge Spanish, Jewish, Arab influence. Hence, that's how I got my looks. Don't stand next to me at the airport. Yeah. So, all right, guys. So my parents grew up no different than the majority of children around the world outside of the United States, dreaming about America, the land of the free, where dreams come true. And their dreams did come true. They made it to America. I'm not going to tell you how. Current administration wouldn't, well, I'm just not going to tell you how, but they got to America. And this is what it looked like. The land of the free filled with crops ready to be picked. But I'm here to tell you that's fine. I mean, that's okay. This is what they did, and this is what they wanted to do. This was their ticket to get to America. And they picked those crops for, for many, many years. But really for them, that was an opportunity, and they took full advantage of that particular opportunity that was presented to them. And really, the reason I'm bringing this up is because it's really the story of me. It's part of my DNA, it's part of my fabric, and that's how I became an economic developer. We're coming back to 2011. We're at the headquarters with Elon Musk, and he has asked us the questions on the table. Do you know why I'm doing this? And we're there and kind of take a step back and we're like, well, there's money to be made in building rockets and launching them into space. It's kind of like a logistics company, right? Except you're going into space. What we didn't realize is we were explaining the what. The what were the rockets. The how was launching them and making money. But that was not the why. Then he proceeds, we can no longer sustain humanity on this planet. So I'm like, this is 2011. I'm going to colonize Mars. So at this point in time, I'm thinking, I've already just bypassed everything. And I'm thinking, I'm just going to get fired when I get back to Brownsville, Texas, and I tell them, let's invest in a company that's had 2 failed launches. They've just successfully launched 1 rocket into space. They've got 2 launch facilities, but they really want to build this one over here in our backyard. And let's use some of those tax dollars to support this particular company. And by the way, he's going to save humanity and colonize Mars. So why were we thinking what we were thinking back then? What was happening back then? So in 2011, anything having to do with space still had to go through NASA. The space shuttle was still flying in 2011. The economic downturn. We were still shell-shocked from the economic downturn. We had no idea how it happened or how we got ourselves into it. We did not know whether we were still in a downward spiral, whether we hit rock bottom, or whether we're already climbing our way out of the economic downturn. And Occupy Wall Street, it was about to happen. Right after that meeting, that's when it happened. And when it came to innovation, to the latest gadgets, and to world-changing ideas, he's the one that we were relying on. We were on the edges of our seat, waiting for him to tell us what was the next best thing that was going to change the world. In 2011, nobody was talking about deep space exploration. Nobody was talking about artificial intelligence. And nobody was talking about autonomous cars. We've come a long way since. And then he proceeds to say, in addition to the why, he starts communicating his vision. And that's something that we did not realize. When we were there, we were witnessing one of the greatest innovators of our time, one of the greatest entrepreneurs right now, communicating to us his vision as to what it is that he was doing. Having the foresight back then when nobody was talking about Mars, and NASA probably was talking about it but not making it public. Perhaps it was on the back burner. And then he proceeds to say, complacency is a nemesis of progress. And at that moment when he said that, it took me back to when I was getting ready to enter kindergarten, and I'm there with my sister playing in the rich, black, fertile soil of Adrian, Michigan, and my dad, swiping the sweat from his forehead, and he says, I came to this country to provide you and your sister an opportunity. Take advantage of that opportunity and don't ever be complacent. That's how I opened up the TED Talk this morning. That's how I opened up the conversation. He still does not speak English right now. World's first vertical rocket launch facility is currently under construction at my Boca Chica Beach in my community in Brownsville, Texas, by Space Exploration Technologies. Son of Mexican immigrants, once a taco vendor, and successfully, with a team and a community and a region behind it, negotiating a deal of a lifetime with Elon Musk. And if there's one thing I want you all to walk away with today, is that one of the greatest innovators of our time right now, and a person with a third-grade education, have something to teach us about economic development. Thank you.